Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mike, Carlo. How you doing?
I am doing well today. We are just kicking things off. It's been a bit of time. We had last week, we did some pre-recorded meetings, and now we are back live again. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We've got an action-packed episode today, but before we begin our news and everything else, let's just quickly talk about what our main topic today is. Our main topic today, we'll be talking about some creature comforts, recently released features of the data warehouse, and making sure we kind of unpack some of these new features that are coming out. These are things such as there's a migration assistant. We talked about in a prior episode that the data marts is kind of out of support. It's going to be done here pretty soon. October 1st is like the deadline. So it's coming up pretty quick. So there's a migration assistant that's out there, a tool that helps you get from data marts into the data warehouse. Talking about some SQL refresh improvements, usability improvements, just generally with using the tool. And then let's talk about snapshots. What are those things? Do we need them? Should we be using these things? So these are creature comforts that are coming to the data warehouse that we should just kind of unpack and talk through. All right, that being said, Tommy, over to you for some news.
Dude, we got some good ones. And yeah, anytime we take a week off, all the news comes in. And one that I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts, Mike. Introducing item history in the Microsoft Fabric Capacity Metrics app. So you have Fabric, you know there is an app or report semantic model that allows you to track your capacity. Same as what used to be in Premium, but obviously all things Fabric. Now, what they've added here, which again, this goes into my bucket of why didn't we have this before? It's a history page that has slicers. So you can choose the capacity name, workspace experience, things by the compute consumption. Just had a great conversation with a client about, so this is something they just made up. Like, oh, yes and no. But CUs by workspace, CUs by item, and the item history. How many times something's been scheduled, or the number of operations by date, the percent of the breakdown by the status of it, how it completed, and the details. So rather than only seeing that kind of current time frame or overall, you can see this by date. Mike, what's your take? What's your thoughts here?
My initial reaction to this one is just, again, we knew all this data was happening. It was all occurring somewhere in Microsoft. We just kind of couldn't see it, which is kind of disappointing, the tracking. So it probably wasn't presented before because each system or each artifact or each item that you're building inside the workspace probably didn't always report the same way. I've heard there's been some challenges. Like each team would just kind of report whatever they need to report. They would only report the bare minimum for like, how to build your team or how many CUs you're using, right? That was kind of like the only requirement, but everything else was kind of like subjective. Well, they've kind of standardized that, I believe, a lot more now. And because every item is now using the same amount of CUs, it's giving you the same amount of consumption no matter what, you can now have this more consistent look at all the items. I mean, I think CU down to the item level is great. One thing I had to dig into here a bit more was they talk about CU per item, and then they talk about smooth CU over time. This is one of my challenges I think I've had, because a lot of the report only shows you the smooth portion, the smoothing of the CU consumption, which I think is actually very difficult because sometimes you have a large effort of something. Let's say it's a copy job or something happens and it spikes your capacity and uses a lot of CUs very quickly, but then you don't really get to see that very easily. And all of a sudden you're getting throttled. You don't know why. Where does that throttling come from? So I think this is going to help you kind of get into the weeds a bit more and say, okay, what are my items that I have? And is that report or is that data warehouse or is that loading job worth the amount of CUs that we're doing to run it? And then to your point, Tommy, like this is another thing here where we can pick on data flows even more now. Like it'll be that data flow is very inefficient and costly. Let's rebuild it into something else. And this is what should happen.
Right.
A lot of this stuff I'm feeling like even notebooks for some degree is like, just build something so it works, figure out the API calls, the table changes, the data column changes. Like you just need something that's fluid enough to get the job done. And then you can always come back after the fact and actually optimize it and then bring down the usage on things once you know it can be used a lot. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
And I think this just goes back to whenever you introduce new metrics to users. And here's the thing: not a lot of people, even listening to the podcast, are probably going to see this. This is for administration. This is for admins of your Fabric capacity or owners. And yeah, we can make. I like that we can make reports off of the semantic model. It's available just like any semantic model. But if you look at the back end, you understand that we're introducing a lot of metrics, measurements that require cognitive load and require context a lot of people don't have. That being said, I think history is a big part of that that's going to help. So happy to see that.
Excellent. Let's move on to the next one. What other news things we've got going on here?
Some of our favorites right now. So we have one of data functions, our user data functions, not user defined functions, but user data functions. You and I had a good conversation about that. And what we have here is test and validate your functions with something called the develop mode, which is kind of strange because I thought whenever you create a user data function, that's what you were doing. You were developing it. But simply, there are two different modes beginning in August where you can now say develop mode or the run view mode. Very much the similar experience in notebooks where you can edit, you can run it, or you can view it, you can edit it, or you can develop it. Or view it. Yeah. And
develop, run, view.
Run view. So these modes provide a space for users with different permissions to perform these tasks. This is cool because again, it's the develop mode is the same concept. There's nothing new in the develop mode. It's the normal mode. Mike, I don't know. I mean, this is fine, but how many people do you think are going in with permissions to view a user data function that are not the same person who's going to develop it?
Yeah, I would also argue. So I'm going to step one even further above that, right, Tommy? Yeah, maybe. So I like the idea of being able to stay in the browser. Like I've done some user data function testing myself and building some of my own.
I know where you're going.
It was kind of challenging just to get it out of the browser and into VS Code. There were some functions that had to be there. It wasn't like one single package I needed. I needed like multiple Fabric extensions. I think they've simplified that now. It's gotten better over time. So definitely it's gotten more consistent. But I just had a lot of difficulty like writing and running code locally and getting it back up to the service.
Really?
So yeah, it just wasn't either the way I have my VS Code right now or these extensions I've added in there. It just was not as smooth as I would like. But this makes, I think, a lot more sense where I can actually develop. I mean, it's VS Code. VS Code is in the web. You could use it anywhere, basically. So I would rather have VS Code in the browser. Now, I will agree with you, Tommy. I don't think a lot of people are exploring user data functions either in our community or generally. I think it's out there. It's used for people when they need it. Right. It definitely is a complementary service to other things as well. Is my first go-to for people to go use a user data function? Probably not. This is very developer, very pro code type experience for things. And so, again, you're the Tommies of the world, right? Tommy, you're going to want to run it in VS Code anyways. So like this is, I think, helpful for people that are newer to this space. I think you're going to need, well, my opinion here is you need to have Copilot in this browser experience regardless. Like there needs to be a Copilot in there to help you write stuff.
So I disagree with the first statement because Mike, anyone who wants to look at Python wants to edit it too. I have not met a person to date says I don't know anything about Python, but man, would I love to see that code. I don't know if that happens. Now I want to explore something you said about the VS Code thing and having that issue. Sure. So because for me, Mike, I haven't done any editing with user data functions on the web. Everything I've created and worked on, not just creating the user data function, but editing it has all been in an IDE, Cursor, VS Code. Question, because I think we can solve your problem here. I think we can solve your issue. I can sell you the pen. Do you use profiles in VS Code?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a basic profile? The minimum.
I don't know.
So I've set up my IDE because I've had the same issue. I'm like, I just want to run one thing or edit a file. I don't need all my 80 extensions just to run and slow everything down. So I have default basic profile, not my default one, but a basic one that only has like 20 extensions. Really minimal things there.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's when, if I open VS Code with a new window, that's the profile that starts. It has Fabric, it has Power BI if I need to do that in Python. But everything else that I've, gone, oh, that's cool. I keep
Yeah.
that, I keep that in separate profiles.
Hmm.
So when I need to do a quick edit, it's pretty blazing fast.
Wow, that's interesting. So I've not done a good job of switching different profiles,
It
and
makes
my default one is the one that I use. So I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
I have set up one for like Microsoft MVP stuff and like other things, but like
yeah.
in general, I don't switch between them. So that's probably a really good idea, is just to simplify down only the extensions you need to run the thing. Make it when you make a new profile, does it keep all the extensions, or does it basically start you from scratch?
You can choose to take so there's a default profile that has basically, if you had never created a profile, any extension you download is
Yep.
part of that. If
Sure.
you create a new profile, you can say start with nothing or use my default.
Mm,
So
interesting.
I first started, I pruned, man. I pruned all the extensions. It was hard to do on my default one. But once
Yeah.
I did that, now if I need to do something in intensive Python, I
Mm,
have a profile for that. But if I'm doing Fabric or just want to go through that, I have my default one can handle that, and it makes a big difference from my user experience and my computer's user experience. But yeah,
interesting.
I have not used Python a lot for user data, even though I'm doing a lot of Python with notebooks. I'm not doing that in the web with user data
Yeah.
functions.
And this is kind of like my rub, right? I mean, the rub here is like I can talk to a Copilot on the side of my browser. I can get the answers that I need. Hey, write me a function that does XYZ. In the browser, it does have a lot of generate code things for you. That's very nice. Like, hey, go generate this code that says go connect to a lakehouse, go use credentials, go access this SQL database. It gives you a lot of like standard, like out of the box code samples, which I think are actually great for starting and learning. I think that's really, really helpful here. So, anyways, I'll say I like the browser experience, I think, a little bit more. I like it being integrated. When I was done editing the code in my browser or my VS Code, I did it in the very early days, which was
Yeah.
kind of, again, very clunky. And it was just difficult to get that code up into the browser, into the web. So I like this feature. I think it's going to be useful. I think keeping people inside the browser session and giving them the features they need to be able to test and run, develop.
So
This makes a lot of sense to me.
I agree. I agree. So that's a cool one. So I think we got one more news, Mike, and this is, oh my gosh, it's not on a Microsoft domain, which is now kind of an outlier for us, but someone we love to talk about. He's probably number 3 on who we have to mention or who we talk about. It's
Yeah.
Christopher Webb.
All
Who
right.
does
What's Chris Webb talking about now?
useful community tools and resources for Power BI and Fabric. That's
Ooh.
anytime I see a title like that, it's always a winner for me. If you say tools and Power BI or tools and Fabric, I'm downloading something. That's my next step. I'm doing something after that because I can't get enough of this. There are a lot of really cool, and this is what he says. There's a lot of really cool community developed tools and resources out there. There's a Fabric Toolbox, the Fabric Unified Admin Monitoring Tool, which is a successor to Rui Romano's monitoring tool. God bless PowerShell, which, dude, the amount of hours I spent learning PowerShell,
Yes.
it was fun. I have to admit, it was actually very fun. MCP servers, Power BI again, the model context protocol servers, auditing semantic models, DAX performance testing, and then there's obviously the Tyndall view, Tyndall scripts. Rui Romano has also done a gallery of Tyndall scripts. There's a script here to create a date dimension from PowerScreen script. Power BI Inspector V2 version of it, VS Code extension to run rules, and the Fabric Studio. So, oh my gosh, this is Mike. This is like having a nice rib dinner for me. I love this.
I love this. This is a good thing. And a lot of these tools are free out there. I don't know why Chris Webb didn't put our theme generator out there, which is also free and another really good tool that's out there as well. So I'll do a yes and on Chris Webb's blog. So themes.powerbi.tips is also out there. You can build wireframes, reports, and now with Power Designer also built into the service of powerbi.com. This is a workload you can use. You can create styles of reports as well. So great news here, Tommy. I mean, this is fun. I really like this one. The only thing that concerns me slightly about this one, so let me give you a little bit of hesitation on my side here. I love these tools. These tools are great. Most of the people in the community are using these tools, and a lot of them are adding a huge amount of value over time here. At some point, though, I feel like I get a little bit also overwhelmed around there's so many of them. Like there needs to be like a single catalog library of here's the list of all the tools that we're finding. Maybe Tommy, you and I should put together like take this list, go build a GitHub markdown page, and then maintain it with like a wiki that just says
Like awesome
here are all
docs, whatever. Yeah.
here like awesome
Woo!
docs like
Woo!
here's a list of all the tools that are Fabric Power BI related tools. Here's what they do. Here's what they work with. And so I think there's a need for this one because this is nice. It's an article, but he's just rattling off a bunch of stuff. I need a list, and someone needs to maintain the list. That way, people can just embed it, and then we could see this like stuff. And like my other challenge here too, Tommy, is like, okay, well, just because you announced the tool, like the FUOM, Fabric Unified Admin Monitoring. Okay, great. It's a tool. Like I get that it's kind of around monitoring, but like you have to go like read the docs and how to install it and all these other things. So it does take some lessons to learn. And I would say most of these tools are for like the pro developer trying to become extremely more efficient on top of what you're already doing. So that's kind of how I see the landscape of this tooling article. It's welcome to pro tools stuff. Here's a bunch of free things and things that you can work with right now outside in the market. It's awesome. There's just so many of them. And that's my only hesitation. It's good. It's good that we had this problem. I really like that Microsoft is opening up their world to PBIR and formatting and all these extra things that makes it easier for us to build tools on top of them all. Right. I'm just a bit hesitating, I guess, because it's is there too much?
No, I think to your point, I don't think there's too much, and maybe I'd never say there's too many tools out there. I think the biggest thing to your point is the organization of it, right? Like I would love to go to a single place to go, what's out there, but Mike, this is kind of the life of the developer. You mentioned that the people who are going to find the best value out of this are developers. I will counter you, or my swipe back to you is, I think anyone who's getting paid to do Microsoft Fabric is that type of person. I think if your primary income is coming from Microsoft Fabric, not that you have to know these tools, but you will find them useful. I think that's the game we're playing now.
Yeah, yes, I would agree with that one. There is, but it's also, I think the scope of what you need to do inside Power BI has increased, or Fabric for that matter has increased. So with increased scope comes the need for additional tooling. And what people are doing is they're finding there's a lot of areas inside Microsoft or even these tools that are efficient or better ways of working with things. Like one tool that I think is incredibly powerful here is the Fabric Toolbox. Is it Fabric Toolbox? Is it Gerhard Berlecki? Yeah. He's got this amazing Fabric Toolbox. It's a VS Code extension. Awesome. This is incredible. Makes API calls, does all these like administrative level things that you'd want to be doing. It just makes it really easy to manage things. So I think a lot of this is, where people have actual tooling experience. Like I'm a VS Code user. I want to use that. This tool supplements VS Code really, really well. And I think that's the idea here is, sometimes these tools are being built in other solutions that are helping you manage the Fabric world.
So let me ask you this awesome Fabric docs, whatever this, a markdown page. Let me ask you this. Does it get organized based on persona in terms of warehouse, scientist, engineering, or is it getting categorized based on, where I'm going with this? Yeah.
This is great.
Your skill level. I think we're going to solve a problem here for a lot of things here because I know which way I'm leaning.
I think I think most of these tools are designed for a persona, I think. So when I think about different personas, like for almost everyone, I'm looking at these tools, I'm thinking, I can almost for a fact tell you which persona each of these tools should belong to. So I would probably err on the side of like, if you were this kind of persona, here's some tools that you may need to care about, like that are interesting to you, sure. Right? There's also, to your point, Tommy, inside that area, right? You could have, a report developer or they call it the analyst. The analyst individual could have a lot of like technical DAX stuff that they need to be able to do to be that analyst. So even in that area, or I'm the data engineer, or I'm the data scientist, there's a lot of layers of like skills. Like, so skills I see being a topic, a particular persona with stacking skills there, right? So it's like a deep and wide kind of thing. I may be a mile wide, but I'm only an inch deep. because you only know just a surface. But like maybe I'm when it comes to report building, I'm a mile wide and inch deep. But when I go to data engineering, like oh yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with a lot of different things, but I'm really good at these specific things, right? So that's the skill stack of that data engineer. You might be specializing your skills into that space.
Yeah, I really like that idea. It's a 3D matrix. Which,
oh boy,
the matrix 3D by itself? Never mind, forget that. But no, it's a cube. You have the skills matrix. We got to do the skills cube.
Yes, skills cube matrix.
This cube matrix. I like that. We'll talk. I don't know how you do that on Markdown, but we'll figure that out.
Well, let's do one little jab here that I see coming out here in this one. So in the middle of the article, I think this is Chris Webb poking a little bit of fun at Phil Seamark. In the middle of the article, he says, my fellow CAT team member, Phil Seamark, why doesn't he blog anymore, has been busy a month ago building a new Power BI load testing tool video here. So thank you, Phil, for producing a load testing tool. But you must be extremely busy because Chris Webb is now poking fun at you and saying, why are you not blogging more on DAX.tips? Which is kind of funny.
That's really funny. Awesome.
Yeah, I found that funny. Back over to you.
All right. So I have a real. We'll see if we can speed this up because I know we're doing on Mike. Actually, do you want to do our parent corner or do we don't want to dive in?
It's up to you. We've gotten a lot through the news. There's a lot of news items. I'm fine hitting our main topic if you'd like.
Let's do the main topic because I don't want to take too much time because not only is it a main topic, but Mike, I think I hear.
Oh,
good timing.
That good really timing. We have a guest again, Brad from the Microsoft product team. Welcome back, Brad. We really appreciate you being here on the show. We are again, shocker, by our title and our introduction today. We're talking about more data warehouses. What better person to have here other than Brad to help us unpack what has been coming out from data warehouses, what's coming up. Let's just unpack these recent features. Tommy, frame us out here some topic. Welcome, Brad.
So, Brad, thanks. Mike, what we're doing here today is if you're trying to get used to the Fabric Warehouse, you want to be comfortable in the Fabric Warehouse, what do you need to do? Or what are the tools, resources, and features that you need to know about just to get started? It's more than just creating a data warehouse. It's also a lot of things and the features that Microsoft and Brad especially has been part of releasing to help make that experience a little seamless, a little easier, maybe like going to the spa and a warehouse spa. And this idea of simply having a better experience developing a warehouse. And I think that's kind of the lay of the land here. And Brad, all the work that you've been doing lately and your team's been doing lately, who have you had in mind? Like, did you start with, hey, we're working on that person who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience, or it's like, you know what, we're going for that guy who can drive the Lamborghini. Let's give him all the tooling he needs.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's an interesting balance that we have to strike with that. And I'll be honest, my background and everything is in building data warehouses, doing the T-SQL code, the hands-on. So I like getting into the internals of the system and like what's going on. And well, when I create this index or I do these stats, how does that change the optimizer? Like I like all that level of stuff. And so when we first built the warehouse, it was very much we want completely no knobs. We don't want to expose any of that information. And then we got a lot of pushback. So we were very much trying to go the Power BI folks, the citizen developer side. And like we got an enormous amount of pushback from the pro dev side. And everybody on my team, of course, and all the people in the MVP community and stuff like that that do SQL Server stuff. And so you'll see that over the last 2 years, we shifted a little bit and we started to bring out some of these other pieces of functionality that were a little bit more code first, or stuff that maybe a SQL developer would like to do. But I think the balance here is now that we've got some of those sort of things, we can't forget the Power BI developer, the report developer, the person that just wants to be successful. So I'm not saying that we've necessarily got the right balance of those things, but hopefully you see through the things that we've released the last couple of months and some of the stuff we'll talk about today that even though we want to give those experiences to the code first person, we hopefully aren't leaving behind the the folks who know T-SQL but don't really want to get into it super duper deep. So like I said, hopefully we're striking a little bit of balance. You'll see a lot, like we enable the Copilot experience to help people, but then we also give the ability to do, user-defined functions or snapshots or whatever that happens to be there. But even for those pro code people, we still want to make it as seamless as possible, so you don't have to like go as deep internally on all that stuff. Give you the capability, not necessarily make you know everything that's going on behind the scenes.
I'm going to say
whether we've hit that mark, I'll kind of leave up to you.
No,
guys
yeah,
to push
we'll
back
let
on
you
that a
know.
little
We'll
bit.
let you know.
I think you're spot on this one, and then also, Brett, I'll also echo here a little bit as well. Like you're struggling in a very different world than the Power BI world, because the Power BI world we're coming from Excel. Things are different, and it was a different enough of an experience where it was kind of like it was kind of greenfield. Like, what does a report building look like? What does semantic modeling look like? How do we kind of transform this Power Pivot type experience and move it into like its own product or tool? So I think to some degree, Power BI could be very business facing front forward without a lot of technical pieces. This is why we didn't have like a report format that was easy to use, or we didn't have PBIR, and it wasn't really Git enabled because the business wasn't like, well, we don't care about that. Like, we just need something to work. So I think your team has a very challenging approach to this because you're coming from a world where there already is all the bells and whistles and the knobs they're all there. Like, so when you step into this new world, everyone's expecting, oh, look, it's T-SQL in Fabric. They're thinking, oh, it's just like my other T-SQL. And so I think they bring a lot of like
SQL Server history,
right. And if it all isn't there day one, we're going to complain. Like I think it's very difficult to do that. And I think you took the right approach. I mean, I really think it was like, you need to land something that's usable for like the front end Power BI user, because we're trying to bring them along, and then listen to the feedback that came back. And I really think that you've done a good job of like listening, and the features that have been coming out are the right features that people would complain about the most, like from the pro dev SQL experience space. And so I think you've struck my opinion, you struck a really good balance between the two. And I see a lot of value being added in both spaces. It's not like just one team, one persona is getting all the value. It feels like it's on both as a little bit. Tommy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Brad, the thing, I'm going to test your guys' nerd level here, and what you don't.
Oh gosh,
we'll see. So because I think it would be very easy to struggle with the case of the BlackBerries, and here's what I mean here. If you recall the BlackBerry phone, when they were struggling in the market, they developed a tablet called Playbook, and it didn't have email because they were like, well, we need the consumers and we need these pros, and it didn't come out with the feature that BlackBerry is known for, which was email. And this, so I look at all the features coming out here, and I look at what you guys are doing, and I don't want to say it's impossible. It's not impossible, but you do have, it's a hard balance to strike. We're like in my head, do you create two different experiences? Where Mike and I joked around on a previous episode, it's like we would love a toggle on the top right, like for developers, and all of a sudden everything has a different UI for that. I imagine that's not going to happen.
It just goes to command line. Like it's the whole thing it's for developers, and it's just, the whole UI just disappears. It's just a CLI. You have to just type commands the entire time. That's all it is.
Straight bash. Just give me straight bash. Straight Git.
That would be very interesting. Although I know you're somewhat joking about this at least, but I would harken back to the days not too long ago when we had the little experience switcher in the bottom left-hand corner and how much crap everybody gave us about that thing. So before you go asking for toggles, remember the experience switcher.
Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for.
That's a good point.
Well, I guess all I'm saying now, it's now Power BI, it's Fabric, it's all the switcher we have today currently. I guess Tommy is what he's really asking for. He's asking for a third switcher that's just command line, and it just takes away all the UI, and it's just a black screen with a little bit of green text at the top there. And we're joking this saying because there actually is a command line, a CLI in the browser already today that you can go play with. So it's still there. It happens. I haven't actually played with it that much because I like clicking some of the buttons at least. So I'm doing that for now.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think we're trying to, without making a button for it specifically. I think
Yeah.
you're seeing us try to move that direction a little bit. In that, like, sure, there's not a button that says, "All right, turn this into command line" or anything like that.
Sure.
But what you are seeing is, as we release some of these new features, you're seeing a lot more of it either be not a button that you have to click, but give you a T-SQL command that you can run in the background. Like, we always
Yes.
want to give you a UI, but we have a lot more over the last probably 12 months or so really started to make sure that if there's a button, that there's also a code path for that. So you'll see that in things like,
Mm.
um, and even sometimes we're going the code first path on that, like a collation, for instance. That was one when we launched it. There was absolutely no way to build a warehouse without going and making an API call. Even you couldn't even do it through T-SQL.
Yeah.
And then some of the stuff like snapshots, for instance, you can change the snapshot through the UX, but you can also roll it forward with T-SQL commands. So, like, I think the goal again in balancing these personas here has got to be, let's, to your point, Tommy, keep the UX as clean and end user friendly as possible. And I think with something we have to try to make sure we don't over index on is, let's make a UI for absolutely everything. And maybe that's what your point is there. We don't have
Yeah.
to have a
Yeah.
UI for everything. Some things can be more for the developer side of things and put it behind a piece of code to maybe make it less accessible so
Yeah.
that we don't scare people by too many buttons. Because, like, I think we also
Yeah.
have that tendency
And
is
that was the
make
problem
button
with
for
data.
everything. It's
Yeah,
overwhelming.
and that was the problem to me with Azure's like Data Factory for someone who was a noob, a novice or noob, and it was there's so many options to check mark. You go, yeah, I'll try it, see what happens. Could be fun, and you just want to see because and there was not an explanation of this parameter. This if you turn this on, turn this off. Compressed index. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
but there's and I think for a lot you're getting a lot of users. I don't know if you heard the beginning of the podcast, but this I think there's something here, Mike, with this idea of the skill cube. Not only do you have people who are cross-platform on science, engineering, warehouse, but it's also that level of interest in that skill in that too. Where I think, to me, what I'm hearing at least from people I talk to, there's a lot of users who are new. Warehousing is the one where they're lacking the most experience. And
Yeah.
again, that's just from the world that I live in, and not in terms of they don't want to do it or they don't know what it is, but it's like, listen, I have a Power BI background, I have a notebook background, Python, Lakehouse is where I'm at, so they're diving into warehouses for the first time. So you almost want that choose your own adventure and also that kind of learning as you go. Like I'm doing something and I'm learning the code. I'm learning the right process as I develop this because there's a need here. As you've been developing new features and trying to make it more accessible for people who understand the need for it, but again, maybe lack the I understand all the widgets to turn. What have been the things that you've been focusing on, the features that you've been focusing on there?
Yeah, I think in I think there's a couple things there. Like, one, I don't work in marketing, of course, obviously.
Thank you. Thankfulness, because then we'd have all kinds of weird stuff. So appreciate that.
That's true. But I think a problem that we've had, kind of going back to the SQL data warehouse days, like before Synapse, even when we first brought MPP into the cloud and all that,
Yeah.
was the term just data warehouse in general. Because I think a lot of times people look at that and they're like, well, I don't have a data warehouse. I just have a bunch of reports that I need to build. And so,
Sure.
like, coming from the SQL Server world, like, we understand OLTP versus data warehousing and OLAP and all these sort of things. So I think it's not necessary. I think sometimes the term data warehouse scares people away, I guess is where I'm going with that. If you know a little bit of SQL, then you should be perfectly fine in this environment. If you're not, don't let that name scare you away because, one, you don't have the skill set. I've never built a data warehouse. Or two, like, I don't have big enough data. Like, that's the other thing we hear all the time from people is, well, do I even have enough data to need a data warehouse? Well, again, in the spirit of making things easier for people, like, we want those sort of decisions to kind of go away. Like, I think we talked about this before, but we will build a single node execution plan if you don't have a whole lot of data and we don't need a bunch of extra compute nodes. But the users don't have to worry about that sort of stuff in
Yes.
order to be successful over here. So the question you had there, like what sort of things are we prioritizing and looking at to make sure that people are comfortable in here? Like, I think there's two things, or kind of three main things. The first is we want to make some of the stuff that hinders performance kind of go away. Things like statistics. We automatically build statistics. Like users don't ever even have to hear the word statistics in their day-to-day world if they're coming from Power BI. They probably maybe don't even know what that is if they've never built SQL Server tables and that sort of stuff. So there's a whole set of things like that. And that would include stats. Make sure you don't have to put distributions on tables, do indexing, all that sort of stuff. And you're going to see more investment in that kind of area going forward. And then number two, I think, is just something you guys mentioned just a moment ago, is making sure that the things you're used to doing in SQL are there, like the T-SQL surface area. Like one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got early on was, hey, this piece of T-SQL is missing. I need that in there. And so that's going to continue to be a big piece of focus going forward. That's going to also include things like temp tables, which we've landed more recently, stuff like that. And then the third piece, I think, is making sure that people have the capability to get from where they are today into this environment. And that's where you see investment into areas like the migration assistant, for instance, that are going to come into play. And you're going to see that continue to improve over time. So if you do have an environment on-prem or in Azure SQL DB or in Synapse today, we make it as easy as possible for you to get from where you are today to where you want to be inside of Fabric.
This is probably one of my larger friction points, and many organizations, I think, struggle in the migration of databases from on-prem things into cloud spaces. And again, I think this is actually a really, your point there, Brad, I think is underrated in the fact that how much friction.
Send that to my boss if you don't mind.
It's an underrated statement. So, I mean, every time I talk to companies who have something SQL on-prem, they're like, well, yeah, it's working. But, it feels like, we get to a place of, we need to refresh some hardware. We haven't really upgraded it to like the newest hardware. We know we need more memory on it. It's got to get bigger. Like the machine's like running out of space. And they're like, we really want to get over to the cloud, but they're like, it's on our to-do list. It feels like a lot of these are just on the to-do list. And there's very few companies that are able to like very quickly without a lot of extra friction, like move it from the on-prem to the cloud side of things without like an intentional project around it. Now, all this being said, like you should be very strategic. If you're that business, if you're listening to the podcast right now and you're like, hey, we should get ourselves to the cloud. 2 points around this one. One, I would say it's very worth your time to figure out how to do it. It's definitely much easier to manage things, and the scale of if you start with medium-sized data and it just keeps growing, you have a lot more leeway inside Microsoft or cloud-owned systems. I love that. So do it. The second thing is you need to be very intentional about planning, getting it out of your on-prem. If you don't specifically set a deadline, work towards it, the number of conversations I've had of like, we really want to get to the cloud. It's on our to-do list. Do it. Like, get it done. Like figure like put a no development time frame. Like, when can you migrate this thing? Get it over to the cloud. Start doing it now. It's sooner than later. It eases. I don't want to have to deal with gateways. I don't want to have to move data between stuff. There's a whole bunch of bottlenecks. You add a lot of touch points of things that potentially could fail by not getting it to the cloud. And so my opinion is the sooner you can get stuff over to cloud, the less items, and again, I'm going to take a like them or hate them. I'm going to take an Elon Musk route on this one. Is less is more, right? Always simplify. If you can take out systems, if you can take out machines, if you can take out hardware, if you can have less things, it becomes easier for you to manage and build. So I'm always of the opinion of simplify. Let's start. What are we building? Can we simplify first and then build net new stuff after that?
And yet the operative word there, Mike, that you said to me is intentional, because outside of the semantic model, to me, I see warehousing being the most intentional if you're going to do. I can test things out with the lake house. It's to quickly get data in. I can create a notebook, not even have data, and just run a Python, run a script, and kind of configure and just, have a little fun. But to me, this outside of the semantic model, I think, to your point, Mike, a lot of people are seeing the warehouse as the most intentional. Like, we need to have a specific product or project rather around this before we start. And if we
Mhm.
have that, we need the resources. And if we have the resources, we need to make sure we have all the technical configuration. And Brad, it sounds to me what you're saying is not that that's been the challenge, but that's where the team has been the most intentional with some of the tooling. Like when I look at the roadmap here, I am seeing a whole smorgasbord of features in terms of things that are pure T-SQL. Like, hey, you can do now, copy into open row set and JSON-L. And there's also things like, hey, time travel. And hey, you have the Fabric editor, which has the nice user experience. So trying to make things as intentional as possible for people. But when it comes to what you're hearing from people, and let's kind of talk about those creature converts then.
Mhm.
What have been the areas, or where do you see for someone who's listening to the podcast today, or myself, maybe I'm just being selfish here, where it's like, hey, you want to get your ease into this, you want to feel, comfortable in this. What do I need to know?
Yeah. So I think there's been a little bit of a ramp up to this period of time where we're able to actually start building some of these things. I mean, like we're talking about, look at the roadmap for the last 6 months and the upcoming 6 months, the stuff that's out there. You'll see a lot of T-SQL. And like, yeah, there's some other capabilities, other functionalities that make things easier, like the copy into or open row set from one lake. But we have to, it doesn't do you any good to have a migration assistant if the T-SQL that I want to run is not there.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what you see now is kind of that's part of the reason why now is the time where you're seeing the migration assistant kind of come into play is like we had to get some of these things that were somewhat baseline, if we're being honest, for running a data warehouse. Like I had to be able to truncate tables. We've got identity coming up, like these sort of things. I've got to be able to have my temp tables because again, if I run my code through and it says only 40% of it converted, that's just going to make people upset. And we don't want to do that. So, I think there's been a lot of groundwork over the last 2 years laid to get to where we are today. I will say on the point of intentionality that you guys were just talking
Yeah.
about there, I think you guys are 100% on that. Like, there's two things I think in the Fabric world or in the analytics world that that people go to for data. It's their data lake, and depending on which level you're at, data scientists want to go as raw as they
Yeah.
can, but that also is kind of the hub of everything else that you do in your organization. And then you got the data warehouse. Like your data is probably feeding your semantic models from one of those two places. And so if you can't, you have to be intentional about putting those two things. I agree, it is easy to just put a lakehouse out there, throw some files in, but I would argue you have to be just as intentional about what you do with your lakehouse as you do your warehouse to an extent because of
I
that.
would agree.
Um,
I think in our conversation here, Brad,
but
around a couple of your pieces here, I'm becoming more pro data warehouse just by hearing you. Like, and I think
yes, that's what I love to hear.
well, and again, I was hesitant because I came from data science world. That's kind of where I came from. So I think you're spot on, and I think there's actually more opportunity here. Me personally, observation I saw with Fabric, with what you're kind of speaking to at this final point here, was the billing method has also changed here slightly as well. So there's been a change, a shift in billing method, in addition to like before. I felt like I had when I was talking like Synapse World and previously any MPP architecture, I was paying for all the MPP and the machines to be up. And you were talking about like a single node cluster that could be spun up and just run everything on one node. Again, it's about the query, the planning. Is it efficient or not? Do we need a lot of machine or a little bit of machine? The fact that you're doing a better job of like only letting us pay for what we're using, like the argument of like, oh, data warehouses, I think there was a stigma around it, which was if I turn it on, it's going to cost me a lot of money. And I think to me in Fabric, this is different. Like I want people to really have a refreshed thought around this. Don't think that way anymore. Go try it out. Go do some things and see how the CU usage looks now, because it's way different than just turning it on. Doesn't mean it's always sitting there billing you CUs. It's a as you use it type mentality, which is I think is a huge point here. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Brad. Keep going. You had a second point you were going to say too.
No, well, I think the billing piece of it's interesting and very very important on that side as well, because like I think the way I would describe Fabric Compute is it's a it's a dedicated capacity with serverless compute.
Ooh.
So obviously you have to pay for it all the time, but the compute comes and goes as you use
Yes.
it. So like you'll see a lot of times, like you can start with an F2 or F4, you throw a little bit of data in there, and like you said, see what the CUs are, and then figure out where you need to go from there. And so it's nice to be able, and it scales on demand, or not on demand, but scales online is what I mean there. And so you don't have to like shut it down for, with Synapse, a 20-minute downtime plus or minus 100%, if you will, to figure out, where you need to go. So I think from that perspective, it does make things a lot easier for people to kind of dip their toes in the water here. But I guess the other thing I'd just say generally about the migration side of things is you're going to see a lot more come into this space. I think in order to get people into the environment easily, I think right now you have to upload a DAC pack. I can't remember what's there. I get confused sometimes. I have to go look at it every now and then, like what's internal, what's external on this. But there's like, you're going to have the ability to say, hey, connect to this Synapse data warehouse, or maybe connect to this SQL server. And that way you don't even have to export a DAC pack in order to do it. You'll just be able to give it the, the connection endpoint and give it the database name, and we'll just pull it directly from there, as opposed to having to go upload, export and import. You'll see the same sort of thing happen on the data loading side of it. So when you get done loading your schema and everything, and if you're happy with it, there's a button in there where you can say create a copy pipeline or a copy activity, copy job. Again, too many names. Copy job in there to be able to move the data all over, and you'll see that expand to all these other sources. And who's to say that we'll just stop necessarily at SQL Server? And maybe there's the ability to bring in from other sources. If people come to me and yell and say, hey, do this particular source, then I can go talk to the right people and make sure that we get that feedback over to them. So again, I think you're going to see that multiple click, but the one-click experience, that assisted type experience, continue to just get better and better over time, and more accessible.
So I want to give you confidence, Brad. You were spot on about, I just pulled the documentation. I also put it in the chat window in case you wanted to see like the prerequisites of what you need to have for the DAC pack file. So, have a workspace, have a fabric capacity, create your workspace, the DAC pack file extracted from Azure Synapse dedicated SQL pool, or a DAC pack file data tier package file. You can then create the DAC in Visual Studio, and then you can pull that up to, that's kind of the migration piece there as well. So love this. And again, this is like kind of our point around, I see friction. Like these people are companies are planning efforts around, should we migrate? We know we should. When's the right time? And I think this is just one of these opportunities to start removing some barrier to entry here, to say, yes, we can just make the migration happen. Let's remove some friction here, so it's not as much of it's not a long downtime to get something up. And again, the idea of the DAC pack is it's like a backup of the SQL database and all the things that are in there, correct?
So Backpack takes schema and data. DAC pack is just the schema, like schema permissions, all that sort of stuff. And I think the other thing too, like these are never short projects. Like I don't know if you've ever done like a SQL Server upgrade or move to it. Like migrations don't just happen overnight. And so I think another area that you're going to see get better and better over time to help folks with this is the ability to say, hey, I already migrated this particular database from this SQL server. But maybe I don't want to bring everything over. Maybe I only want to bring some of it over, so I can maybe do a schema at a time. And you're going to start to see the ability at some point in there come in to say, well, now I already did this migration. Let me go pick up the next piece of it. Or I did this migration, I modify, I fixed this one store procedure. Let me go rerun it. Because today you have to go in and just create a new warehouse every single time. And that doesn't necessarily fit the reality of the way projects work sometimes.
I love that.
That will obviously work.
Because you're gonna pick some of the heaviest workloads first and just go, let's let the 2 or 3 heavy ones, get them out of here, right? There's a couple little side projects or something. Like we can't assume that one server is only one function in the business. Like it's probably potentially serving many different databases, which would be doing many different solutions or apps or whatever. There may be a lot of stuff behind it that are actually supporting multiple projects for that matter. Sorry, Tommy.
I was just say real quick. So I think there's two sides of that we have to handle. It's the one database that we want to move over incrementally But then we also have to be able to say, I have a one database now. I want to split that into multiple databases on the other side of it, so that we can sort of re-architect a little bit at the same time.
No, I was
that's
going to
cool.
say a lot of the words, a lot of things about the warehouse, I think, is important for us to know. Is unlike a lot of the other features, this is not like a light switch. We just turn on a warehouse, and you can. I mean, the ability's there, but in terms of it actually being an efficient part of your organization and part of the process, that doesn't happen overnight. Um, with that, I know there's a few features of Copilot, and without obviously losing your job here, do you see Copilot being more of a creature comfort in terms of from a project point of view? Because right now it's the SQL Analytics endpoint. It's available on the SQL side, but that's kind of more of a call it a per file type of thing. It's not in the context of the entire project. To me, if there was ever a situation for an integrated Copilot for a single artifact in Fabric, it's the warehouse. Is that a conversation? Is that something that we can talk to somebody? Can we get Aaron's number? Do talk to you? Uh,
Well, let me ask you this: what do you want to see from that? Like, because you're right. Today, I mean, it's a little bit of a here I'm in line with my T-SQL code. Explain the code to me, or I'm in line with my code. Fix my code, or generate this code, that sort of thing. So, are you thinking like you want to tell it, hey, here's my database, go help me migrate it, or like what do you want?
Let's talk about what we talked about. The steps we talked about, the people coming to a warehouse, and these people, if they want creature comforts, they are on that. I know warehouse, but I'm not vertically aligned here. I don't have that vertical step. So to your point, the where do you start? The majority of people, I imagine, listening to the podcast, if you do it, bonus points for you. Never heard of a DAC file before, much less a backpack file. And again, those people are already in depth with warehouse. They're getting what they need. But for a lot of users who are saying, what, we need to do this Fabric, and I guess a warehouse is not as big as we thought. So how do we do this here? There's almost that like giving the step by steps on where do we start? Here's the data do we have? Generate a plan, not generate a plan for us, but to that effect of what do we need to turn on? Here, to your point, let's start with migrating data rather than just help me generate code on a single query. So yeah, I'll start there, and I'll let you try to navigate those waters. So,
no, I think maybe where that's kind of going. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, do you remember inside of Azure we had the what's the thing? Azure, the recommendations, like the Azure Advisor.
Love those.
Yeah. So I would think kind of what you're explaining there to me would be a little bit of an Azure advisor sort of thing, but not necessarily just on things that I've already built, but also, hey, like you say, hey, I want to go build this. And then we would say, all right, well, you want one warehouse to do this. And maybe in this case, you want to use data clustering or something like that. Like here's some advanced features maybe for you to be able to use. Or, just have it go in and do an analysis of your warehouse. Like,
No, and good.
I say I don't know that we have anything like that. I mean, not that I've heard of, nothing like that in the works. But I think it's a really interesting idea, like how like other ways that we can just help people get up and running more quickly in there. We've obviously got the framework and everything for that. We know what best practices are, and like we've got all these different architectures and all these sort of things. So I think it'd be really interesting if we did have some sort of extension to kind of give you that, and then even drop you into some of these experiences, like the migration assistant, or here's a code to build a table or something like that. I mean, we can do some of that stuff like at a very basic level. I think today, like you tell it, here's my business use case, and what help me generate the schema for it, and it'll kind of help you with that a little bit. But I think what you're looking at is maybe taking that 5 steps further than that, and making it a bit more useful for folks getting into there, which I think is a very interesting
What I'll
idea.
do is I'll book you for March. We'll follow up on this, and we'll talk about how great the feature is. No, but I think this is I think I love this idea here, and I honestly, a lot of the features that are available, the migration assistant itself, right, that was launched in Q1, correct?
Yeah, February, March, I think it was, or we announced it. I think we announced it back then, and it came out right after FabCon, like beginning of April.
I think for a lot of users, and again, our organizations, and Mike, tell me if I'm wrong here, the guiding
wrong.
principles. I know.
Just kidding.
I
I'm just
set
kidding.
you up
Keep
for
going.
that one.
You gave me a softball. I'm
I
going to hit this one.
I should,
I'm going
I
to hit.
should
I'm going to
know.
swing every time, Tommy.
After 5 years, I really should know this. So that's on me. No, but I think that a lot of the features here where there's this really good the level of comfortability for someone who wants T-SQL is getting better and better. And then with the migration assistant, the fabric editor, the web editor, and also things that people would be used to in a normal SQL background, like snapshots, and the time travel too, where it's like, how do I actually make sure that I have a backup of my data is becoming more and more available. So I love seeing where it's going. Brad, if I were to ask you as of today, where someone's going, if you were to take one thing from all the features that have been released and drop everything else from to say this is what you if you want to be the most comfortable in a warehouse and you are mid-level here, what would you focus on? What feature would I latch onto? What would that be?
Well, so there's in the last couple minutes here, I do just want to also mention one other thing before I answer your actual question there, because I want to get your thoughts on
Sure.
this actually. You might have seen that we're actually getting rid of the default semantic model.
Oh,
Do you
we
guys think that's
praise the heavens on that one.
That
okay? I thought so.
We
That
threw
was
a
like one of the
party.
biggest
We threw a
pieces of
party.
feedback we had
Yeah.
for a while.
and the reason
Okay.
we like it's being gone was the UI that we wanted to build with it was a little bit limiting. Like it just didn't do the same things that we can do just by creating the semantic model separately. And there was some kind of weird syncing issues there. Like, so very happy that that's kind of just disappearing and we just get like the lake house, and then just at least give us like an auto create button and say here's the wizardy thing of like, okay, I have lake house, I have something, here's the things I want in my semantic model or warehouse, and boop, it just kind of like works. Like it just links together and we're good. Like that's all we kind of think really needed.
I bought a cake to celebrate. Okay, it was a good day. So, but question. So why do you ask that?
Yeah. No, I'm just curious because I hear from a lot of folks that are like, why did you guys put this default semantic model on here? It's kind of useless. We don't ever actually use it. Not that it's necessarily useless, but like most folks don't use the default semantic model. And I don't know if it's still in the docs or necessarily anything, but I think we actually at one point said we don't necessarily recommend even using the default semantic model. It's there in case you want it, but we always recommend that you create your own semantic model separately from the item. And so that's why I ask. Like, it's one of those things we've heard feedback on it really since the private preview days of Fabric back when it was still Trident. And I think it's one of those things we just finally got around to and said, hey, we're going to go ahead and do this, make people happy. And so I just want to make sure the people are actually happy about this. And that's also one of those things, like most folks probably won't even notice that we announced that sort of thing. One day you'll just kind of wake up, you'll create a new warehouse or a lake house, and you'll be like, oh, I forgot. There's no default semantic model there. I've only got that one thing in there now. So, but yeah, that's the only reason I asked.
I feel like this is potentially like a leadership level, and I know like Amir talks a lot about like the 5x5, right? So there's like 5 minutes to start, 5 minutes to wow, right? So there's like minimal, 5 minutes to do something impactful, right? I mean that's kind of like was the initial mantra of Power BI. And I think they just kept adding fives to things, right? So it's 5x5x5. Like so now 5 minutes to data to my lake house, 5 minutes till the semantic model shows up, 5 minutes to report shows up. So I think that was part of that idea.
5 sub items behind
exactly. So now we're up to 15 minutes total or whatever. So I think that a lot of this was Microsoft was, I think, in the right heart and intention to like let me auto create some stuff for you, so that way as soon as data appears, it's immediately available and ready to be used. I think what we're finding though is, to your point, Brad, I think it's a little bit more the technical people want to put their hands on a bit more, right? We're able to get some stuff done, but to build the simple reports on top of a default semantic model, there's more metadata that needs to be added to that semantic model, relationships, measures and things. And so, yes, it helps, but it doesn't really get us really where we're going. And so while it's a novelty, when you started the process, it's no longer really needed because everyone's like, yeah, okay, we get it now. We understand how it works. We don't need to go use this default thing. We're just going to go build our own now.
Mike, your point.
Yeah.
There are people who turn off auto date in time and people who don't know what they're doing. So it's very simple. Okay.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's very simple here. So
Exactly. One other thing I want a feature that we called out in the liner notes here that I do want to just kind of pay homage to as well. In preview currently is create and manage data warehouse snapshots. I think this is actually a pretty underrated feature, and this was announced in May of this year. It's in preview right now. It's not currently released yet, but you can create the warehouse and you can immediately creating snapshots. For those of you who don't know, just very quickly here, we need to wrap on the end here, but Brad, maybe land us a home point here on snapshots. Why are they important? What was the need here that the community was asking for, and what is this solving?
Yeah, so I think I'll give you kind of both sides really quick here. From a developer perspective, when I would go build a data warehouse, you spend a lot of time figuring out how to get all these different pieces to line up. I've got my sales data that comes in every 15 minutes. I've got this other data feed over here that comes in real time. I've got this other one that I get in a batch every night that may or may not arrive at midnight or whatever that happens to be. And you have to get all that data loaded, because if you load your sales before your customers, then you end up with orphaned records and all these sort of things. So I think from an ETL developer perspective, it takes a lot of that kind of orchestration out of the mix and allows you to just say, or I guess maybe I should back up real quick and say what snapshots are. Snapshots are basically a a view of your warehouse at a particular point in time, and it's frozen in that point in time. It's read only. It carries over the security from your existing data warehouse. And so what you can do is you say, I create a snapshot. Everybody's now going to point to that snapshot for their reports, their semantic models, whatever that happens to be, as opposed to pointing to the data warehouse itself. So that way, all those things I was just mentioning as an ETL developer, I can load the data in whenever I need to.
Huge.
And I can trickle feed that data in, but my users are seeing the copy of the data as it exists of that snapshot. They don't even know that I'm in the process of updating.
Love it.
And then what I can do is I can just go run a T-SQL script and say, update my snapshot to the current point in time. And now all of a sudden, my users click a button and they're like, oh, hey, my data is all up to date. I've now got all my sales and all my customers and all these sort of things. So I think from the ETL developer, it simplifies the orchestration. From the end user perspective, it makes sure that you can be more confident in the data that you're looking at, that you don't have to worry about, well, this is only a partial data set, or maybe something went wrong in the ETL last night and I just don't know about it. I don't have to have a little status at the top of my report now that says when the tables were last updated or any of those sort of things that we used to do back in the day. So it gives my end users a confidence in the data that it is, in fact, the gold layer that is already curated, already been cleaned, all that sort of stuff. And like you said, it's just a simple roll it forward, roll it backwards. It's basically a time travel for everything to a specific point in time inside your warehouse. So I think it's got a lot of benefits for both sides of that.
Tommy, did you want to say something before we wrap?
No, honestly, this has been awesome, especially for someone new, data warehouses kind of thing. Like I said, you've been selling me, Brad. I'll give you props. You've been selling me the pen pretty well here. But no, I think for a lot of people, again, there's going to be this mental barrier that they have around warehouses. Like, well, I can't do that. I'm not enterprise. But I think we're hopefully breaking down.
Look again.
Look again.
Look again.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I would agree with that one wholeheartedly. Sure. I think there's, Tommy, I would definitely agree with you there. There's take another look at this. This is something I think people would want to step back and say, let's revisit this one. And again, I'm really excited about the snapshots. I think snapshotting is amazing. The amount of times where we're trying to like snap some data and like build something on the side and then replace, like hot swap it at the last minute so it's all corrected. And like, what happens if a data load fails? You just get the data a little bit longer before you refresh everything. And so someone can kind of like bless it and say, I think snapshots is underrated because I think this is a huge feature for reliability. And again, this is one of these features that I think, Brad, what you're asking about here, we talked about the whole time, is pro devs showing up and saying, this is something we need. We need the ability to control this one, and you can control it with the Fabric portal and also the REST API. So you can do programmatic things with this as well, which makes sense because now I can run a pipeline or a copy job or whatever. And then when that's done, then we can roll the snapshots over at the end of the process, assuming we all have successes and check things.
Well,
put on the back.
The last thing I'll say about that is like the rollback piece, I think is super important to that too. Because if you do this like in a SQL Server environment, you go do all your ETL, you have to roll back. Like, what do you have to do? Well, now it's how long does it take me to restore my database? How long does it take me to then apply all my transactions? Like it's not a simple thing. Here you're like, oh crap, the data is messed up. I realized some pipeline didn't run last night, but the snapshot can move forward. Okay, well let me go run a T-SQL command and it's already rolled back.
I love it.
So
that's so smart. Anyways, awesome. Brad, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you going deeper diving on all these creature comforts of the data warehouse. I am much more of a fan than I was before. I love the structured data sets. This is getting better. Oh boy, Tommy and I have to learn some new things now. So this is exciting. We'll probably have more discussion about this coming up. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. Tommy, let's just do the wrap here. Where else can you find the Explicit Measures podcast?
Oh man, Mike, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And share with a friend. This is free content on the web. And do you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about? Maybe something around warehouses, perchance. Well, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of PowerBI.Tips social media channels.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate you. Have a great day.